Welcome everybody to our annual Smart Forms annual reporting training with CAP 60 and with our friends from NASCAS. I wanted to welcome all of you. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have a big group today because our brothers and sisters, our partners from Utah are joining us. For those that have not met any of your Utah partners, there's a great big wide world of community action out there, and we're really excited for them to be able to join us. So we're going to start off with Muska. She will introduce herself. We will then go into, we got some North Dakota friends here too. So we'll start off with Muska. She'll do a quick introduction of who she is and what she's going to talk about. We'll then move into CAP 60, where Gabby and Sylvia are on the line with us. They will be able to answer any questions for those who may have some questions about how to pull your CAP 60 reports for your smart forms. And then we'll leave some time at the end for general questions. We have Hugh and Amuska here from NASCAS, as well as Heather from our state office. So we would love to be able to answer any of those questions. Muska and Gabby and Sylvia, you guys should have the share capability, and I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself, Muska. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. This is Muska Cameron, Research Director at NASCAS, and I'm actually joined today by Tiffany Jarvis as well, who's our newest Senior Analyst at NASCAS. So she's going to be here listening in as well. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, so I might just cough at inopportune times. But I'm super excited to be here. I appreciate you all taking the time to go over this stuff. And so I have 15 minutes and I'm going to really try to prioritize what we can during that time. I see North Dakota folks, I have not forgotten about you, so I will reach out to see if we could schedule something there as well. But let me go ahead and share my screen for now. Okay, so I'm going to start with the smart forms, and let me make sure. Are you seeing the screen with files on screen where it says CSBG Care Supplemental Annual Report? Do you guys see that? Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
So this is just where I've saved my smart forms. They might be called something different. My version is just a super generic template version for what we call the forms, but yours will be much more specific. It'll say fiscal year 22, Wyoming, your agency name, your DUNS number, all of that stuff. But this is just what I have here. The first thing you want to do this year, and it's specific to this year because tech is wonderful and they love constantly doing updates to make it more secure, but that a lot of times means it adds steps to our process for doing things. So Excel had an update, and so Excel is automatically blocking all macros from working, which our smart forms operate entirely off of macros. So you absolutely need to make sure that they are working before you start doing the data entry. So the way to ensure that the macros are working, you want to right click on the smart form that you're interested in using. And this is regardless of whether it's CARES, whether it's the regular, whether it's module 2, whether it's module 4, it does not matter. You want to right click, you want to go to properties, and then you wait for the properties to show up. Oh, which showed up on a different screen for me. So let me drag that over. So under properties, right here on the general tab, you'll see something around security here. You just want to click unblock. Super easy step, and you hit OK, and you just want to do that for all your forms. Now, this only applies if your version of Excel actually has the update. If your version of Excel does not have the update, you will not see an option to unblock, in which case you don't need to worry about it. But if you do see that option to unblock, you should definitely check that out before you begin doing data entry into the form. So once you've done that, then you want to open up your form. My form is going to be completely blank because, like I said, it's a very generic template version that we use. And I didn't want to put any specific agency's information up on screen because you might not be comfortable with that. So I'm just going with a very generic form. And let me see if I can drag it over here.
Scott, I've got a question in the chat that somebody is not seeing your screen. I am seeing your screen. It looks like the document folder for Windows 11 is open. Is anybody else having problems not seeing the screen?
And it might be your Zoom settings. You might have to click on like the Zoom icon at the bottom of your screen and see if it's giving you multiple windows there, and you want to select the window that has the screen sharing.
Thank you very much. I am looking, it should say
There we go.
color-coded fields. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now once you open up your smart form, right, the first thing you might see an enable content button or an enable editing button, doesn't matter which one. You might see both, but you should always see an enable content button, and you always want to click that. If you're not seeing an enable content button, pause and go through some other steps, which I'll go through now. But if you do see the enable content button, you want to click on it, and you want to go to this outstanding errors and warnings tab. And you want to make sure that this XML export button is actually working. I don't know if the agency itself does the export to XML. If you're not the ones that do the export to XML, you still should at least check that the button is in fact working, because that is a telltale sign on whether the macros are working or not. So I'm just going to click OK to create my XML just to make sure that this thing is operating as intended. And let's see. Ooh, I have to scroll up in my horrific file there, but let me just see. So I do see that it did create the XML because I hit the OK button, which means that the button is working. If you go through this process and you hit OK and it's safe and it's not working, it will tell you it won't work. But let's try that again. Sometimes this thing gets so finicky. So let's try XML export. Let's try putting it in my downloads. If I click OK, boom. Okay, so as smart form export created, that means that the button is in fact working. So you just want to check for that before you start doing data entry, because if it's not working, it means that your file somehow got corrupt. And there could be any reasons why that happens. A lot of times in your email security systems, the systems strip the forms of macros because they're worried that there might be harmful content coming through or whatnot. So first and foremost, you want to make sure you see that enable content button, and you want to make sure that this button here is working. If it's not working, that's when you want to reach back out to your state office so they can request NASCAS for new versions of the files. The other thing you want to look in your files is, like I said, mine are completely blank, but yours will come with your previous year data pre-populated here on the right side if it's a module 2 form. If it's a module 4 form, all of the previous year data lives on the final 3 tabs of the form, and I can show that later. But you want to make sure that your name is here, your state name is here, and that your DUNS number is here, and that all of your previous year data is here in this faded out right side of the form. And the reason for that is because a lot of the flags that are built in the form check against your previous year. So when you start typing in data, it's going to flag if it's different from the previous year. Mine isn't flagging because I don't have any previous year data, right? But that's when you will start to see yellow and red highlighting based off of what data you had in there the previous year. Apart from that, you'll notice errors here and there. So this one, is a fatal error, which sounds so dramatic, but it just means that it must absolutely get taken care of. You have to select your reporting period, and every agency within a state is on the same reporting period. So make sure you know what your reporting period is when you are selecting this. And this is really important. So notice I haven't selected anything there. So let me try saving this right now and see what's going on. So if I select this, that error should go away from here. Boom, we are done. Here, let's say I select other in 8.4. Oh no, I selected other, but I didn't, put anything here to describe what my other activities were. That's when I start talking about just updating data systems or whatever it is that I wanted to talk about here, right? And notice that that error goes away as I type it, right? So some of the things just to make sure you're entering data completely is if you enter an expenditure amount for your CSBG for agency capacity building here, you have to then fill out this table here. So if I said I spent $1,000 of my CSBG on agency capacity building, I have to actually fill out this table. So you'll see that I have an error here. It says I must select at least one checkbox since I reported funds above in 8.2i. So I'm going to say we did it on needs assessment and training and technical assistance, right? Vice versa, if you select things here, but you don't have a dollar amount here, you won't actually see a flag here because we did not build that flag in the form, but you should still check that out on your own as an agency. You should not fill one out without the other. And so just make sure that if you did have CSBG expenditures on agency capacity building, that you are completing that both here and here. And so this is the regular module 2 that I am looking at right now, right? The regular report must include everything that you have done, which includes your CARES activities as well. So over here, when you are reporting your CSBG expenditures, that means all of your CSBG expenditures, including your CARES expenditures, right? So just thinking through an example, if I know I spent $1,000 of my regular CSBG on housing, but I also know I spent $2,000 of my CARES CSBG on housing, I add that here. So I add my 2,000 to my regular 1,000 that I had spent. And so I should be reporting the $3,000 total that I have spent under housing in my regular module 2. Does that make sense? I don't see any affirmations, but I'm going to hope that everybody heard that loud and clear. Just make sure that you are always, always, always including all of your CSBG expenditures here, including your CARES. And then you just want to go through tab by tab, and there's just some common errors you'll see, for volunteer hours. If I'm saying my total number of volunteer hours were 100, I can't say that 500 of those hours were donated by people with low income. I have to make sure it's a subset, right? So you want to make sure that subset numbers are always smaller than the numbers above, and you just want to go tab by tab. And I'm going to pull up the module 4 tab just so you can see what the module 4 smart form, just so you can see what that looks like as far as year to year goes. And bear with me because my files are acting up right now. Okay, so come on. My coworkers tell me it's because I always have 100 things pulled up. That's why it acts up slow, but I would probably have a heart attack if I had to close out any of those 100 things. So give it a sec here.
While she is waiting for those to open up for it, for those of you that haven't put your name and agency in the chat, could you please do so now? And then Muska, we had some late people, we had a link issue. And so when you're finished with this main piece, I'm going to ask you to go back and do that technical change with the update on the software.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sounds good. I don't know why it's not loading for me because of course it would happen. So I'll try to go back and show you, but oh, there we go. Finally, this is the CARES, not the one I want to open. I want to open the regular. So let's see if the regular pops up. But on the regular module 4, you'll see the year-to-year data. It'll just be, there we go, perfect. So this is the regular module 4. You always want to enable content, and then start entering data in on each tab. Your year-to-year information is actually going to be on the last tabs over here. And again, it will be pre-populated by your data from the previous year. And then as you enter data into each of these tabs, it's going to populate these last few tabs with the data for this year. And we don't actually check for year-to-year variances in Module 4. I'll put that out there. These tabs are here primarily as a reference point for you, so you can see, you know, what changes are happening in your data. The only data point in Module 4 that we check year to year for is your total people served and total households, and whether there's a significant change there. So just a note there about Module 4. So relationship between cares. Again, in your regular Module 4, you report everything you have done as an agency, right? In all of your outcomes, all of your services, all of your demographics, it's everything you have done as an agency. And so obviously that includes your CARES activities as well. And in the services, because the CARES Module 4 only asks for services, you need to absolutely make sure that those services are being reported in the regular Module 4 as well. So again, you know, same example, if I said I did 100 food boxes, and that's just with my regular, or that if I say I did 100 food boxes, but my CARES shows 200 food boxes, I already know there's an issue here, right? I can't have a bigger number in my CARES report than is reported in my regular report. So I always need to make sure that everything I've done is absolutely included in this regular report. And for Module 4, that means your services specifically. So some CARES specific items to be on the lookout for, and let me see if I can pull up the CARES Module 2. Which looks like it's loading. I believe everybody on the call is a small state. So what that means is you most likely had a contract for a certain amount, probably the first year of CARES, and then you got a renewed contract the next year with more money from CARES because your state office did not have access to that money in the beginning. So you probably got 2 separate allocations for CARES. So when you're filling out your CARES Module 2, there's a data point in the CARES that doesn't exist in the regular, okay? It's this one over here called amount of, you know, fiscal year XX, CARES supplemental allocated to reporting entity. Forget what the fiscal year says. That's just what's on the form because that was what was passed. But what you want to report in your 8.2 in the CARES is your total allocation that you have received for your CSBG CARES. So if you got that in 2 separate contracts or in 2 separate allocations, it does not matter. Let's say you got $100,000 the first year, and then you got $50,000 the next year. What you are reporting here is $150,000 for your total allocation, okay? So report your total allocation. Then you want to report your CSBG CARES expenditures only here, right? So, you know, whatever your expenditures were, you report them here. But then what's that step? You always want to make sure you're including whatever's in here in your regular Module 2 as well. So if you're saying I spent 50,000 of my CSBG CARES on housing, when I look at your Module 2 smart form, I should at least see 50,000 under housing, right? And if you've spent your regular CSBG on housing as well, it should be the combined total of your regular CSBG expenditures on housing plus your CARES. So you want to take a look at these side by side if you can, and make sure that in no instance you're reporting something in CARES that you're not reporting in the regular report there. So that's for section A of the CARES. The numbers are just slightly different from the regular. Instead of 8.2A, it's 8.3A, same data points, you know, same purpose. If you fill agency capacity building expenditures here, you should fill out this piece over here, right? So same concept as the regular form. You don't have to do section B in the CARES, which is why you will not see it there. For section C, over here for C.2, it says CARES funds allocated. It gets a little bit confusing because when we say include your CARES allocations in the regular Module 2, when we say CARES allocations, we really just mean your carryover for this year at this point. So For fiscal year 22, you would report whatever you had left over from the previous year, right? So your fiscal year 21 carryover, everything that you've had left over from the previous year. Plus, I don't know if you got any discretionary funding. If you didn't get any discretionary funding, don't worry about it. If you didn't get discretionary funding for fiscal year 22 specifically, but otherwise you are reporting your carryover plus any new funding you might have gotten, right? So whatever you had left over from the previous year, that's what you put in C.2. And then that final step, that's what you add on to your regular module 2 C.2 as well. So in your regular module 2 C.2, you are including your regular CSBG allocation for fiscal year 22, plus what you're reporting in your CARES module 2 C.2, which is your carryover at this point, right? So your CARES module 2 is reporting your carryover from the previous year, and then you add that on to your regular CSBG allocation here in the regular module 2. Any questions on that piece there? Let me pause.
Ms. Gray, I want to lift up a question in the chat from Karen. Clarification. A-2 is CARES award alone or includes CARES discretionary. Not sure why I can't keep this straight. LOL.
No, it's a wonderful question, Karen. It's super complicated, and we try to avoid mentioning discretion only because it applies to a small percentage of folks, so we don't want to throw them off. But 8.2 here, this is out of the 90% funding formula allocation, so it does not include discretionary here. So you would include the allocation, the total allocation that you received that was not discretionary.
Any other questions in the chat or any other questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself. There is a lot there going back and forth. Remember, your regular is the big pot, CARES is the smaller pot of money. Make sure CARES is included.
We did do a webinar with OCS on January 4th. I don't know if they have released those slides yet, but I will definitely be on the lookout for those because we actually do more of like a mathematical breakdown of what would be reported using an example of what would be reported in your CARES C.2 versus your regular C.2 there. There's a question on where do they track discretionary? Excellent question. As of right now, we don't. As of right now, CARES has just put an interesting twist on everything. I'll just say that. So previously, this regular report, right? This is where you report your regular allocation, plus if you have discretionary, okay? So you report your discretionary here. It's not broken down. You know, when you're filling it out, you're reporting the total of what you're reporting here. So we don't know how much of it is your 90% versus how much of it is your discretionary versus et cetera, right? So this, for CARES, this includes, you know, you add your CARES amount to whatever you normally report here, which is your regular allocation plus your discretionary, but it all just becomes one number here. So we don't differentiate it here. On the CARES, you report your 90% funding formula allocation in 8.2, and then you essentially report your carryover plus discretionary, but again, discretionary isn't singled out, you know, it kind of just gets added on to your carryover that you had there. And so you report your discretionary for fiscal year 22 that you received, and you just add it on to the carryover amount. So there isn't a distinct place that says, hey, this is the discretionary only. It just always is a part of C.2, but C.2 can include multiple different things. So it won't break it down for you. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, so while you guys are formulating some different questions that you might have for Ms. Go, may I have you start at the beginning? We had several people that came in. I just wanted to let you guys know also, for those of you that had a bad link, this is being recorded, so you can go back. But I wanted to give you just a really quick look at some of the tech changes.
Yes, so let me bring that back over here. So this is my file folder. It might look whatever it looks like on your end, but let's say your state sent you smart forms and you saved it into a specific folder, right? Your smart forms will be called something different. Mine is just a very generic name for the smart forms, but yours will have a much more specific name, something along the lines of fiscal year 22 underscore, your agency, your state acronym underscore your agency name underscore your DUNS number. So that's what your forms will be called, but these are what mine are called. So Excel has had an upgrade this year where, because of enhanced security features, they are no longer automatically enabling macros. So you have to do an additional step before you open your forms and before you do data entry in order to make sure that your macros are running. So what you want to do is you want to right click on the form and you want to go to properties. And here's my property. Oh, perfect example. Notice I don't actually have anything here that says unblock. That means I don't actually need to worry about it and I am good. So I'm just going to click OK, but let me try a different form here. I think I've done this so many times that all of the features are showing unblock, or all of them have been unblocked at this point. But let me see if I can pull up. So I can't show it right now, unfortunately, because I already walked through the example earlier, and so you won't see it. But if you pull up your properties, you should see a little checkbox here that says unblock, and you just want to click on that, and then you just want to hit OK. So I think when I sent the smart forms to the state office, they have an actual one-pager on what that unblock looks like as a screenshot. I'll send that over to you right after this webinar, just so everybody has it as a screenshot. But you just want to go to your properties, and if you see an option right down here to unblock, you just want to click on it and click OK. Unfortunately, I just can't show it right now because I already did it for these forms. So that's the new security feature. And then as far as the CARES reporting is concerned, do be on the lookout for those slides from OCS, because it will do much more of a numerical sort of breakdown on what you include in your CARES C.2. So just to reiterate, in your CARES C.2, it's your carryover from the previous year, plus if you got new discretionary for fiscal year 22. And then you just add that onto your regular report, which just includes your regular allocation and discretionary like usual. Does that make sense for everybody?
Thank you. And are there common roadblocks or common missteps that you see again and again and again that we should be on the lookout? A lot of these, I think, have to do with the yellow highlights when there's a great big discrepancy between this year and last year. Or what are some common things that we're seeing that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so I tried to go over through some of that in the beginning, right? But let me pull up the form. First thing first, right? Reporting period. It sounds like a silly thing, but we actually do want to make sure that everybody is reporting their reporting period correctly. And that might be because if an agency is not reporting their reporting period correctly, it does raise questions as to, are they even reporting for the right time frame that they need to be reporting on, right? So first, this has become a much more common thing that we've noticed. It might just be a simple, not double checking, but you want to check here. Like I said earlier, you won't see highlighting on my forms because I don't have previous year data, but you will see highlighting on your forms. And when you do that, that highlighting is going to be because there's a year-to-year difference between the previous data points. Let me actually show if I can bring up a slide from something else that I've used. Okay, so this is the slide I've used for something else. Notice that there's yellow highlighting here. You can ignore what's on the right side because that's not the point I'm trying to make. But if you see the yellow highlighting, that means there's a year-to-year difference. And so you do want to check that out. If there is a year-to-year difference, all your errors and warnings will show up on this tab here for errors and warnings. So you just want to go through that and make sure you're addressing all of the things there. If it highlights because it says, oh no, this is significantly different from what you reported the last year, It's just a standard flag we built in to catch instances where you might accidentally have added an extra 0 that you didn't intend to add, right? Or maybe you put it on the wrong line item. So if you see those highlights, just check it out and make a comment saying, actually, the data is correct. Or maybe you do realize that you had misentered the data, in which case you just fix it and voila, the flag goes away, right? So year-to-year flags is some of the most common things you'll notice. That thing I mentioned earlier with agency capacity building, if you enter something here, you also need to make sure that this piece over here is filled out as well, right? So right now, it's not filled out, so you're going to see an error message here. So those are honestly the most common errors we see in module 2, which is predominantly around the relationship between 8.2i and 8.4 here, and then the year-to-year variances. In section C, some of the most common things we see, again, are the year-to-year variances. It will highlight yellow if you see a significant change. Again, just double check the number's correct, and if it's correct, you're good to go. You just make a comment there. If you're writing in other resources, so I don't know, maybe I have some random ABC resource. I need to specify a CFDA number that's in the right format. And that format is usually 2 digits, followed by a period, followed by 3 more digits. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're providing a CFDA number and that you're then putting in the dollar amount associated with that. So some of the things we've noticed is people are either not putting a CFDA number or it's not in the right format. And I just put ABC here because I don't have an other resource, but you want to type out what that other resource is and try to avoid using acronyms there. So in module 2, to be honest, those are the most common things we see. With CARES thrown into the mix, the next common thing we see is if they're not including their CARES here. And some of the telltale signs are, and this is what we went over in that webinar with OCS, but some of the telltale signs are, for example, this is the regular report on the left side, and this is the CARES. And that's exactly what you guys want to do, is you want to pull those up side by side. This agency is reporting around $14,000 in services supporting multiple domains, but when I look at their regular report, I don't see that there, right? Which tells me they're not including their CARES in the regular report. Another telltale sign is if their CARES expenditures are more than their regular expenditures, right? So that's another telltale sign. You're not including your CARES in your regular if your regular is actually showing less money than your CARES, right? So you want to just always make sure that you are including everything in your CARES. At no point should there be a value in your CARES that is more than what you reported in the regular report for that same field. So that's module 2. In module 4, the checks are a little bit more they're not obvious flags. They're just sort of more things you want to be on the lookout for. So we do have certain NPIs that are specific for a demographic. So this one is specific to children ages 0 to 5. You won't see a flag on this because our forms currently do not have that capability, but this is one of the things we do look for at the national level, is if you tell me you served 5,000 children here, I don't know, your target was 4,000 and you helped 4,900 children get the outcome, right? I'm expecting to see at least this many kids in your all characteristics report, which is this demographics report at the end here. So I shouldn't see, only 100 kids here for ages 0 to 5. I should see presumably at least the 5,000 that you said were working towards that outcome. There could be any number of reasons why there's discrepancies, and you would have to speak to that as an agency in your comments or whatever. But generally speaking, those are the most common things we look for, is if you're telling me you served a specific demographic group and that shows up in the education NPIs. In the employment NPIs, it shows up for the definition of youth, which is It's 14 to 24 in the employment NPIs, but the definition of youth changes when you come to the health NPIs, then it's 14 to 17. So you do want to be mindful of that. So we will check if this number is, more than what you reported for people ages 14 to 17. Same thing with seniors and individuals with disabilities. That is reported in your demographics. So if you're reporting more people here than you reported in your demographics, that would most likely become a flag in your memo that you get back. So that's really the most common thing that we notice in module 4. Other than that, just always make sure you're putting complete entries. If you're writing in an indicator, make sure you're actually filling out all of these columns below here. And then, like I said, we do not check for year-to-year variance in module 4, except for the all characteristics report, where we do check if your total number of people served and total households went up or down by a significant amount, just because we want to make sure you didn't accidentally fat finger in a number, right? So that's really the main reason behind those checks. It's not meant to be a gotcha, and it's not meant to question the data. It's just meant to ensure accuracy, because when we roll up that data, we want to make sure we actually have right data down to every local agency level. So those are the common flags.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. Is it possible for the state or for the federal office to provide blank module 2 and module forms just for that are non-smart forms that are available, that maybe they can use as a collection place for data? And maybe I'm not understanding the question correctly, but Chris and I would invite you to come off mute and maybe help with that question.
So this is Christina in Sweetwater County, and the reason why I want non-smart forms is because I would like to distribute them to my subgrantees, and the forms as they are populate all the agencies and means nothing to them, and I actually aggregate the information and review them. So that's why I need them.
So we have Excel versions of the form. I know we had done that sort of in the beginning time of this new annual report. I'll have to revisit to see if we even have updated versions of those Excel files. I'm not sure if we have posted updated Excel versions of those files, but if we have them, I can send that over to the state office if we have them, right? And it'll just be a blank Excel. It will not have any previous year information, and it won't even look like the smart form. I think the Excel forms we had originally created, I want to say 5 years ago at this point, so they're a bit outdated. They're actually black and white essentially. So I'll have to dig through and see if we have anything for current year.
Okay, and that's what I did use last year, is outdated ones. And so again, I just want the fields all zeroed out, even if it's a smart form format, like with it's on two sides, that's fine. But I don't want any data in it, if that makes sense.
Got it. And that's good feedback for us to know as well. Just thinking through, the different ways that agencies may be collecting that data. So it's good for us to know also that those blank Excel forms are actually helpful and they are needed.
Yep. Thank you so much. And again, it's like a draft format for me to aggregate it at the grantee level. So thank you so much.
Christina, thank you very much for asking that question, because that might help Doug's question too, about making sure that we get all the individual data from the multiple sub recipients of this funding, and making sure that they fill in, because a lot of them, you're not going to have their module 2 information. So those Excel forms can be very helpful there. One other question, for weatherization, do you see a lot of people incorrectly putting DOE versus LIHEAP from HHS in the funding stream on module 2?
That's an interesting question. So there's in module 2, section C, where you're reporting your resources. You are reporting, there's a resource for weatherization, and then there's a resource for your LIHEAP, and then your LIHEAP weatherization as well. I don't know that at our national level, we would be able to tell what folks are putting there, to be quite honest. So we haven't noticed whether they're putting weatherization dollars under LIHEAP erroneously, or whether they're putting LIHEAP weatherization under regular DOE weatherization. I'm not sure that we would be able to tell because we just see the numbers, right? And so we wouldn't necessarily have the context for that.
Sorry, Clint also noticed that the blank Excel formats of module 2, 3, and 4 were replaced by PDFs on the NASCAS website a few years ago. So those might be in there. I do know that I've had to take PDFs and you know, change them into an Excel document, but then all your calculations are off. But if you don't need the calculations and the formulas and you're just taking the numbers, that might be just fine with you.
We have the PDFs, yes.
Okay.
It's those Excels that I think we
Okay.
took down. So I'll have to see if we're able to create an Excel file. That would mean we would have to update all of the previous Excel files. So I'm not necessarily going to promise that that's going to get done in the next day or two, but it is noted that there's a need for those Excel files.
Okay, awesome. Well, while you guys think about and ingest all of that information that you just got, because it was a lot, and I have been doing smart forms for many years right alongside with you, and I am very happy I do not have to do a smart form this year. So I'll just rub that in just a little bit for you. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to introduce Sylvia and Gabby from CAP 60, because you're going to have to pull some CAP 60 reports in order to inform and populate your forms. So take it away, Gabby and Sylvia.
Hi, everyone. This is Sylvia. So I'm pretty sure those that are here are familiar with myself, helping you run reports or just doing trainings throughout these several years. I also have Gabby, who's actually been supporting the state of Wyoming in the last month or so. You guys are probably most familiar with Abigail, but she's actually no longer with us here at CAP 60. So I have Gabby here as well. She's been reaching out to the subgrantees and grantees recently. So some of you may have become familiar with her as well. Now for today, of course, just kind of covering reporting. We are here to support you in terms of running your annual reports. I know that over the years, it's definitely kind of been easier for you guys. We have a lot of less issues. For new staff, of course, just kind of getting familiar with the report and what to look for. You may still have some questions. So today, I kind of basically want to walk through just running the annual report really quickly, what to look for in your settings, and just discuss with you guys if you guys have had any issues. Normally, we like for you guys to run your reports on a monthly basis just to keep checking your numbers, making sure that everything's okay, and not wait on the last or not wait for the last minute to start looking for discrepancies. So again, we've had some people already reaching out. But let me go ahead and share my screen here. And again, if you guys have any questions or any comments or have had any issues lately, just let me know what your questions are specifically.
And while her screen is coming up, I'm just going to remind you again, if you have not put your name and agency in the chat, please do so now. Thank you.
All right, so I am in the CAP Albany, Wyoming database. Obviously, generating the report would be the same for everyone. As far as whether or not you're a grantee that has subgrantees, the settings are just a little bit different when you break down your centers and programs. But for the most part, everyone's running the report the exact same way. So on my screen here, I actually created a report, and I'm going to start from scratch here. So I'm going to go ahead and add. Okay, so I'm under the reports area, CAP, CSBG NextGen. Okay, so once you add your report, basically you're filling out the parameters here. Again, most of you are already familiar. So you can name it whatever you want in order to locate the report. Okay, your outcome year is going to be 2022. Okay, so you're reporting for the 2022 year. Your NPI filter is going to be left as is, not assigned. And your from and your to, you're going to go ahead and put the entire 2022 year, which goes from 10/1/2021 to 9/30/2022. And And then for your filters, you can go ahead and select your agency or leave it as all. Okay, it doesn't really make a difference. You only have one agency, which represents the grantee. Your activity year, you're going to want to go ahead and leave the activity year as all. Okay, if you go ahead and select 2022, it won't necessarily cause an issue, but for the most part, just kind of, you know, getting familiar with the report. When you put all, you're just looking exactly at the date range. Okay, in case you have, you know, other funding sources that are in your database that represent other years or date ranges, you don't want to include that. So just kind of get in the habit of putting all just like this for the activity year so that the system looks at whatever date range you've entered. Minimum zip code, maximum zip code, you're going to leave it blank. And you're going to want to make sure to select this checkbox option. It says add the other report filters as all. That just means you're reporting on all your programs, all your services, all your caseworkers doing data entry. So you're just reporting on everything. If you are a subgrantee that is generating your numbers, basically all is whatever you've done as a subgrantee. So you're not pulling other subgrantees information or anything like that. This is basically whatever you've done as a subgrantee. Okay, or if you're the grantee running the report, it means all data in the system basically. Okay, but I'm going to show you how to break it down. So you're going to want to make sure to select that. Where it says your expenditures originate from, you're going to select the first option. Technically, no one in Wyoming relies on the CAP 60 database to
Oh, we just lost Sylvia. Was I the only one that just lost Sylvia, or did everybody else lose her too?
but you can select the first option. To keep it simple on your options, you're going to set everything to yes. Okay, so you don't have to worry about which one has to be set to no, which one has to be set to yes. For an annual report, you're pulling all activities. So technically, you're setting it to yes all the way down. Okay, so I'm not going to get into details on these options or anything like that. Just kind of sticking to the point. When you run your annual report, make sure everything says yes. Okay, for all activities, right, including all family members. And you're just going to save the report, so you don't have to worry about this Head Start section either. So it's going to look just like this from top to bottom. Description 2022 from 10/1 to 9/30, making sure you select this checkbox option, right, and then setting your parameters to yes. And you're going to save the report. Okay, once you save, you're going to go ahead and locate your report. So you can do if you're a subgrantee that created the report, then it would automatically be created as your program name. Okay, but it's going to look like this. So for subgrantees, when you look at your program and your center, it's going to be the name of your subgrantee. Okay, right now, because I'm doing it as someone who has a full access, I'm doing all centers and all programs. Okay, but each subgrantee would basically have their name represented there. So it looks something more like this. Okay, so this is what it would look like, and you're reporting on all services, all statuses. So for an annual report, again, you're just including all activities. Then you're going to want to update your report. So there's an update all section here. And you're going to want to save. Okay, you're going to want to make sure that it's updated. It's going to give you today's date automatically. If you don't notice today's date, you may want to just kind of click on each line item. Okay, but for the most part, once you do update all, it should give you today's date. Okay, so I want to just take a quick pause to see if anyone here has had any trouble just, you know, creating the report or any issues in the past. Because once you update, you're basically just looking at your different sections to get your, you know, your numbers for your demographics, the number for your section A, your section B. Does anyone have any questions so far as far as the reports or any comments, anything that we can note down, maybe follow up with? So again, we'll kind of be reaching out, just making sure that you guys are creating your reports and there aren't any issues.
Yeah, this is Clint in Utah. Hey, sorry to chime in, but I just want to point out This is for the, how you pull the annual report for everything, like the normal annual report. I was just going to mention that some of the settings might be slightly different for those who are doing CSBG cares. At least in Utah, because we set up those dummy variables. It's the only kind of automated service mapping that we've set up, just so that you can filter by grant. So I was just gonna kind of just highlight the fact that I think there might be some slight differences between pulling your regular report and like your service count for your CSBG cares.
Well, I think that's an excellent point, because when you go to that filters column right there and it talks about the funding, you can specify if it was just CARES Act funding that paid for that. So that would be another way. So you can get your big pot of money for your first set of forms, and then your CARES Act reporting, you can narrow that down to just that specific funding. Thank you for that reminder.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
I think it's easier to have two reports personally too, that your CSBG cares is as a new report, honestly, just so you don't get mixed up. Because I know Muska was really good to tell us to be careful about the subset issues, right? Making sure that there's a logical sequence between your CSBG cares, but that that's within the bigger, CSBG. I don't know. I think it's helpful personally to have two different forms, one for all your stuff versus your CSBG cares.
All right, thank you so much, Clint. I'm glad you pointed it out. I was thinking more of kind of the complete report with everything combined. But yes, with your filters here, you can break it down by your funding sources. So there's a funding link here if you need to remove. Okay, so you'll just delete everything except for, your cares or whatever you're trying to report on. Now, with that option, I do want to point out something really important. So I'm going to go ahead and just do, let's say, cares, just as the example. So if I removed everything except for cares, the only thing to consider is when you are breaking down your report by funder, there is one setting that would need to change. Okay, for some of you, if you don't change the setting or you change it, it may not make a difference, but for some of you, it may. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you are at any time breaking it down by funding source, okay, that your first option here is set to no. Okay, the reason for that is here it's saying to include activities from case management, referrals, follow-ups, and projects. No is services only. The system identifies, who funded a particular client based off of service records. So you can only tie funding to services. So by setting this to no, you're having the system look at services specifically. And now you're saying, this is the funding source that I'm selecting. And now I'm only considering service records. Okay, so you're going to want to set that to no. Now, in the past, there may have been issues with goals and things, not pulling up when you're breaking it down by funding sources, but that has since been corrected. You should be able to put no here, okay, and then make sure that all your other settings are set to yes, okay. When you first create your report, we've kind of removed this last setting here. So when you're not breaking anything down, right, everything is set to yes, but this was kind of created just based off of breaking it down by funding sources. So still, when you are breaking it down by a funder and you put no here, just double check that everything else is set to yes like this. Okay. And again, your annual report, right, with everything combined, not considering funding sources, just consider everything being set to yes. And then again, if you're breaking it down by funder, it has to look at services specifically. So it looks something like this. Okay, just kind of an FYI. And just always make sure you update. Okay, so when you do make any changes, let's say you go from running the annual, just total, now you want to break it down by cares. Anytime you make an edit, you do want to make sure that it says here, it says update required, right? So you want to update one more time. Otherwise, you're just going to see the same numbers if this still says that it requires an update. Okay, so this is automatic whenever you edit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and update one more time, and I hope that makes sense. But again, if you feel like you have any discrepancies on your report, or something isn't right, just feel free to contact us. We normally are good with kind of just scheduling a meeting, walking through the report, and fixing any of those discrepancies. Okay, so I'm actually gonna go back and add everything here and update one more time. Okay, then you have your demographics section. But since I'm doing everything, I'm gonna leave it how it was originally. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then you have your demographics. So this is just, and I'm not gonna do a drill down because this is being recorded. So I don't wanna kind of put, details and family details and things like that. But for the most part, you're going to just kind of get those numbers and plug them into the system. I did one subgrantee. Okay, so again, you're gonna just get your numbers. You can print it out if you want to kind of have that in front of you while you're filling out your smart form. At the top, there is a CSBG printable. Okay, so it'll basically just kind of print, give you a printer friendly version of the report. Right, so you have your families, your individuals, the breakdown of age. If any section says no information obtained, feel free to click on that number and it'll tell you exactly who's reporting and you'll be able to fix that. Just remember that about the case audit. Okay, some of you are already familiar with that. You've probably heard me say that 100 times. If you're making corrections on your report, you're going to want to do a drill down of who's reporting and you're going to want to update within the case audit section. Okay. Okay, so you're just going to go ahead and click on the CSBG printable. Okay, and it's basically, again, going to give you kind of like a printer friendly version of the report. And then at the top, you can just go ahead and click on the print here so that you can print that out. Okay, now a couple common, I guess, discrepancies on the report is normally when it has to do with like income. So you guys are pretty good with entering demographics. All that is pretty straightforward. When it comes to income information, sometimes I do notice people fall under the unknown or not reported. So again, you want to make sure you can click on who's reporting there. And if someone doesn't have income, you want to specify that. A lot of times I notice that you guys just leave it blank. So you guys will just normally just skip the income page. In this case, there is a setting in the database, but just to avoid that, if it really isn't any income, you have to specify no income. You can't just leave it blank and assume that it's not income. That's pretty much it. I can't really say that demographics are, you guys normally have issues with that. So I'm going to go into the next section really quickly. I know we're kind of running out of time here.
Sorry, Susan and Sylvia, I'm so sorry. It's me being me. I think last year I noticed the way that the definition polls for the veterans demographic, that if you were to pull the numbers specifically, you would trigger off one of those fatal smart form warnings. Do you know if that's been fixed since last year? Because it's like the total should equal like all, I don't know, there's something in the smart form logic.
Yeah, Clint,
One.
Clint, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was if your numbers of people, there was 18 and under and 18 and over started getting weird with the veteran number. Liska, did you have something to add on that?
Just that in the demographics report, the way that that report is structured, the military status and work status is supposed to be reported for the people that are over 18 years of age, versus I think the common misconception is that they're reporting it for all the clients served. So that subtotal, they're making it equal the total number of clients up above, when it really just needs to equal the total number of people that were 18 or older.
Because that was one I could not get out of on last year too. It was that error that just kept circling through.
Okay, so technically for the veteran section where it's veteran, active military, no military affiliation, it should be only 18 plus.
Yep. For military status and for work status. That's just the way that that demographics report is structured.
And is this specifically dealing with the smart form or just in general for reporting?
For reporting.
Okay.
reporting, yeah, because I think that's the only like cap 60 data point where I found that fatal error on the smart form. But just kind of looking at the NASCAS manual, I was able to figure out and just, we were able to adjust in the unspecified to make it equal, like the number equal to the 18 and over. But like, yeah, that's the only data point that I think I've run into issues with is just that one.
Okay, I mean, the only thing I can suggest when you do a drill down, if it gives you the age, but that would mean you'd have to because you get like an export and then you can remove anything. Do you guys mind if I do a drill down? Not sure if you want to stop recording. Again, this is like real people,
can-
so I'm not sure if you
I
want
can pause it. Yeah, hold on.
Okay, remove some of those. Okay, so I'm glad you guys kind of brought that up. Now, other than demographics, you have your Goal 4B and your Goal 4A, which is actually Module 4, Section A, Module 4, Section B. So under your 4B here, these would just be the services. So again, it's just really just getting your numbers and plugging them in, right? Whatever numbers are there, and just making sure. And again, there's a printable version of this as well. So if you want to, here it says print Goal 4 Section 2B, right? So you can kind of have a document there. And then you have your Goal 4 Section A, which would be the outcomes, okay, that you're tracking. And again, just kind of grabbing those numbers there as well.
Now, one thing you are going to notice is on this particular one, and I would venture to guess most everybody in Wyoming does not have anything entered in their target numbers. Annual reports are going to ask you what your target numbers were. This is for Roma. This is for you to plan to find out where your outcomes and your performance target accuracy is going to come from. These are going to be your mapping numbers that you submitted with your application for fiscal year 22. And there we can talk about where you do that later, but please note those are all reading zeros now, but you do need to submit that information for your annual report.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, definitely. And a lot of times you guys have reached out to us in the past asking about those target numbers or the smart forms requesting that. So we were provided your work plans for 2023. Some of you may have submitted it for 2022 as well. However, we're not actually, as far as the 2022 year, we didn't go in there and enter targets. So you guys should actually know that we wouldn't know what your targets were unless we actually looked at your work plan. Okay, so again, we get a lot of questions and you guys ask us why it's not populating. We actually would not know that. Okay, so you guys have your work plans as well, where it would kind of define and show those target numbers. So thank you, Susan.
Yeah, and I want to lift up Clint's comment too, because these are not the numbers you make up after the reporting period ends. It's like, oh, I want to see a really good performance accuracy or a percentage achieving outcome. These need to start at the very beginning. Clint, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, because a lot of times, here's one of the challenges. I don't know if Wyoming has the same challenges as Utah, but a program manager gets a directive from their executive director and they're not necessarily knowing where their community action plans are or their work plans. So sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect and people ask, where do I get the target numbers? If you're really being intentional with Roma, right? You know what your targets are at the beginning of the year, not at the end. But I think it's a very common practice to have people go, all right, pulled a bunch of numbers. Where do I get my target numbers? And they've not even been clued into what their stuff is. I'm going to say this is way more than a smart form, an annual report, or a CAP 60 thing. This is a Roma thing that, like Susan mentioned, that yeah, you don't come up with numbers after the fact. I don't know.
Thank
Is that
you,
what you're
Clint.
kind of
Well,
going for?
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I was going to say in Wyoming, this is part of your application. These are the mapping forms that are provided with your application. You have to put in what your target numbers are going to be. Now there's going to be times where you're like, well, I actually didn't target any services there, but I ended up providing services there. That's fine. You could have targeted 0, but you do need to put in your number of participants served and your actual results of who met that. So we'll go ahead and move on because it is 11:10 and I know a lot of people have places they need to go, but I really want to make sure that everybody's feeling super comfortable about where to find all this information of where you're going to populate these reports. And so, Sylvia, I'll let you finish what you're doing, but I wanted to remind everybody that we're also recording this. So I can go along if you can't, and we'll go ahead and post it to our YouTube channel.
All right. So just kind of leaving off of the targets. So again, we don't have those numbers. Make sure you're looking at your work plans. But that's pretty much it. So just creating the report, looking at your sections. For the printable version of section 4, you're going to want to go to all goals. And then it says click save button to update and view all goals. So you're going to click save. Okay, and then this is kind of your more printable version. You can use a printer icon here. So it eliminates kind of, the bars, the scroll bars and things like that. So you can just see your numbers that way.
That is awesome because I always wondered how I could print that.
Yeah.
I did have one question. Doug asked, do all clients and services need to be closed out for last fiscal year as well, correct?
Sorry, ask that question one more time.
Yep, do all clients and services need to be closed out for last fiscal year as well, correct? And Doug, if you're on the call, maybe you might want to expand on your question. And we may not have Doug anymore.
So just
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
So many screens popped up that I couldn't find my unmute button. Yeah, like I don't have a clue what I'm talking about really, because I've never done this process. I don't know what it looks like, and I'm in over my head at this point. However, closing out whether a service was provided or a client was provided in between the end of the fiscal year and whether services continued didn't necessarily matter from my understanding, but services needed to be, or clients needed to be closed out to be tracked in last fiscal year. Something of that nature. I don't really know.
So a client doesn't necessarily get closed out. For reporting purposes. The system identifies kind of like a service record and the date of the service record to know what year they're reporting for. So there really isn't like a closing out of a client. So if they have services for the 2022 year and they don't get any services in 2023 or any case created, then technically they wouldn't report. But there isn't like a process that you guys have to do. It's just that moving forward, if they do become served in the next program year, you're basically creating a new case and representing new services for the year. But yeah, you're not necessarily closing things. Now, there are some agencies who have a kind of like a best practice and they may put the status of a year as closed, but that doesn't make a difference. Like these reports are not affected by a case status, whether you leave them closed, whether they're still open for the year. That doesn't affect your numbers at all.
So
Right.
the services and everything are date sensitive, not case sensitive.
Right.
Also,
Okay.
and the other thing is we have a lot of clients that may have services received in 2022, but did not achieve the goal yet because they're still in process. And so they may not, you may have provided the services, but they haven't achieved yet because they're still working. So that happens too. That's why it is date sensitive, not case sensitive.
Perfect. That's what my concern was. Thank you.
Yeah. Heather had a comment too, Heather from our state office. Remember, your targets have to be included on your annual report before you send to the state. So make sure you look at your mapping form from last year. If your target is 0, you need to be sure to include that comment in the tab for the outstanding errors and warnings. And that narrative can be as simple as I did not plan on providing that service. However, we did plan the service, and that's why there's activity in there. As long as there is just a comment for why that, and it's going to pop up yellow or whatever the arrow is, you need to tell them why. Heather, I'm sorry, Sylvia, is there anything else that you wanted to add? Because there were a couple of comments that I wanted to make about what happens next. And Heather and I were going to talk about that real quick. Thank you, Miska, for everything.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you, everybody.
thank you. No, that was pretty much it, Susan. And again, if you guys have any questions or need assistance with generating that report, just reach out to myself or Gabby so we can help you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, so for everybody else on the call, what happens next? The deadline is coming up. You guys have your deadlines for when all smart forms are due back to the state office, so they can go ahead and start aggregating all of their information, making sure that they can turn their forms into the feds. After that, they will be reviewed, but there will be error reports that come back after the situation where that we will have to go in and put some comments in areas that we might have missed the first go around. Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can let us know. And Karen, please feel free to jump in from Utah too. What happens after people submit their smart forms to the state office?
Well, I can tell you as much as I know is that once we receive those, we'll have an opportunity to review them. And then after we have a chance to review them, get back in touch with you to fix any errors, we need to upload that information into what we call OLDC. And that goes directly to Grant Solutions, which goes directly to OCS with the ACF. So that way they are reviewing those. So just to back up a little bit, I can tell you guys that earlier this week, I had a meeting with OCS regarding the previous year's annual report. Now, this annual report that we met about had several errors on it. In fact, I'm still in the process of trying to go back and fix all of those errors. So from my understanding, now remember, I'm completely new, but from what I'm looking at, perhaps those were not reviewed with a really strong intent to get correct data last year. So the reason I'm telling you guys this is because they will be reviewed very, very carefully, very intently, because we don't want to be fixing this a year from now. I'm so glad Muska really talked about the common errors that are out there. We want to make sure that we are able to fix the things that are easy fixes the first time you guys do that. And just to show that you guys are completely on board is the huge amount of participants in today's meeting. So I would like to thank all of you guys. You guys are already, 3 steps ahead of anyone that wasn't able to make the meeting today or watch it in the future. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Karen, because Karen, you really have more of a historical knowledge about the process moving forward.
I don't know if we have Karen with us anymore.
I think, I think Karen had to go to another meeting, but I can say in Utah, I think our deadline is on the 15th, no, not 15th, it's a little bit later than that. But anyway, what'll happen is that the State Association and Karen will get together, we'll do a kind of a cleanup memo to the agencies first to look at some questions, see if there's any clarifications needed, kind of do a first review. And if it gets to like around 2 or 3, a lot of times Karen will just call up your agency directly, but then they'll do the same OLDC upload that Heather mentioned. That's pretty much it for us.
Thank you, Clint, for that. What is our deadline again for getting all of the smart forms into you, Heather?
I believe it is February 15th, but let me
Okay.
double check that just to be sure.
And while she's checking that, I just wanted to remind everybody, Heather, me, Sylvia, Gabby, Muska, all the people are here available to give you all necessary training and technical assistance as needed. Please do not hesitate to reach out. I also wanted to let you know, please, 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 there is a link in the chat for a survey for today's meeting, so you can tell us what you took from the survey, or from the training, what was helpful, what could be better. And then I will be taking this recording and I will be placing it on our YouTube channel for you to look at later. We'll also be providing a link to that in our newsletter that will be going out shortly. Clint, I'll send you the link for this so you can send it to your team in Utah. We also have some North Dakota folks, so I'll send it to that. If there are any other questions, please hold until after Heather confirms that deadline for us, and we'll go ahead and answer those as we can.
Yes, so the deadline is actually February 24th. So you guys get a little extra time in there. That only gives us a few weeks to review all 15 grantees, all of their sub-grantee compiled onto the smart forms, and then get back and ask for your guys' compliance. So that being said, the number one thing you guys can do to save time and make everything more efficient on your behalf is really to check that one tab. And what was that one tab called? It is the one with the highlights, you know, like I got a big problem.
The yellow boxes, the warning boxes. And at the
Warning
beginning, yeah, and
boxes.
at the beginning of each one of these forms, there's also a listing of any information that has been flagged. There's a whole list of it, so you don't have to go
That's
through.
what I was thinking
Yeah,
of, yes.
yeah, there's a tab that has all your outstanding warnings and errors, and they'll go ahead and get that. All right, folks, thank you all so very, very much. Unless there are any final questions, we're going to go ahead and call it good. I'm going to let you just take a couple of minutes and I'll stay on until everybody's off the call. Thank you all.
Thank you, Susan, for
Bye,
putting
you
this all
guys.
together.
Bye, Utah. Bye, North Dakota.
Bye.
Oh, by the way, the deadline for Utah people is January 20th. I had to look at my calendar. Anyway, thanks so much, Susan. You're awesome.
Thank you, Clint. You too. Bye.
Bye.